The ground shook under the charge of 10,000 horsemen. Muskets roared, swords flashed, and in the smoke and fire of battle, an empire that had stood for 1,000 years was being torn apart. Villages burned. Priests were cut down at their altars. Ancient churches carved into the mountains crumbled into ash. Ethiopia was dying, and no one thought it could be saved. This was not a foreign conquest. This was a holy war turned blood-soaked civil war. Portuguese musketeers fought beside Ethiopian warriors. Against a commander so feared, they called him the Conqueror of Abyssinia. His name was Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, and in the year 1543, his armies stood on the brink of erasing Christian Ethiopia from history. But then the mountains fought back. For more than 1,000 years, Ethiopia stood as Africa's fortress of Christianity. Its kings traced their bloodline to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Its mountain churches were carved from living rock. Its armies defended the faith against invaders from the lowlands. But on the eastern frontier, the Adal Sultanate, a Muslim kingdom stretching across the Horn of Africa, had grown strong. Backed by Somali cavalry, Harari warriors, and the promise of Ottoman guns, Adal's new leader would shatter the fragile peace. Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, known as Ahmad Gragn, the left-handed. To his followers, he was the sword of Islam. To his enemies, he was a storm made flesh. He was a master tactician, wielding both the fury of cavalry charges and the precision of gunpowder weapons. And in 1529, at the Battle of Shimbra-Kure, he proved his genius, defeating a much larger Ethiopian force and opening the gates to the highlands. The years that followed were pure devastation. His musketeers, Ottoman-trained, wielding matchlock arquebuses, tore through Ethiopia's spear and shield warriors. His cavalry struck without warning, leaving entire valleys in flames. Churches that had stood since the days of the Aksumite Empire were reduced to rubble. Priests were cut down mid-prayer. Thousands were forced to choose between conversion or death. By 1535, three-quarters of Ethiopia lay in ruins. The Emperor Lebna Dengel was on the run. His court scattered, his army shattered. And yet, Ahmad was only getting started. Lebna Dengel knew that Ethiopia could not survive alone. Across the Red Sea, in the far-off kingdom of Portugal, he sought help from fellow Christians. In 1541, the answer came in the form of 400 Portuguese musketeers under Cristóvão da Gama, son of the legendary explorer Vasco da Gama. They brought with them heavy muskets, steel armor, and the experience of fighting Muslim powers from India to the Persian Gulf. Their arrival was a beacon of hope and a direct challenge to Ahmad. At the fortress of Basente, the Portuguese struck first. Their disciplined volleys shredded the Adal defenders, forcing Ahmad to retreat. But the victory was costly. Supplies ran low. And Ahmad, furious at the foreign interference, summoned reinforcements, 2,000 Ottoman-trained arquebusiers, carrying the deadly firepower of Istanbul into the mountains of Ethiopia. In August 1542, near the village of Wafla, da Gama's men made camp. They didn't know that Ahmad's full army, tens of thousands strong, was closing in. The attack came at dawn. Muskets cracked from every direction. Cavalry tore into the flanks. Portuguese lines crumbled under sheer weight of numbers. Da Gama fought to the last, but he was captured, tortured, and executed. His death sent shockwaves through the highlands. Without their foreign allies, Ethiopia's fate seemed sealed. But the survivors of Wafla refused to surrender. Limping, bloodied, and half-starved, they reached Emperor Gelawdewos Lebna Dengel's son. Together, they rallied an army, 8,000 Ethiopian warriors, 50 Portuguese musketeers, and the will to fight one last battle. It was suicide, but it was the only way. In February 1543, near Lake Tana, the two armies met. The Adal host, 15,000 strong, swept forward. The Portuguese fired disciplined volleys, cutting down wave after wave. Ethiopian cavalry smashed into the flanks. Spears and swords clashed with scimitars in a frenzy of blood. Amid the chaos, a musket ball found its mark. Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, the left-handed, fell. His death broke the Adal army. What began as a roar ended in a rout. Ethiopia was saved. The war was over. The Adal Sultanate retreated to the lowlands. The highlands were free again. But the price was staggering. Cities were gone. Monasteries lay in ruins. Thousands were dead. And yet, the empire endured. Ethiopia had faced the full might of a gunpowder empire and survived. This was the war the world forgot, but for Ethiopia, it was the battle that saved its soul. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and watch out for next week's battle story. Africa has always been strong,